CountryWide CONNECT, connecting farmers and growers to what they need to know to grow. Your daily innovative rural show with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.
Right, are we going to go to Karen, or are we going to
We are going to talk to someone who's far from ugly, Karen Williams. Have you ever been introduced like that? Chief Executive of Irrigation New Zealand is with us on the line.
Good morning. Hi, how are we?
Good, thank you. Good. Sorry, segueing from talking about Andy's pig there. But Karen, we're talking to you now on a very serious topic, which is, of course, water storage and irrigation. We're starting to heat up around election manifestos, and I know you'll have one that will be very pointed and direct to all of the parties. Do you want to talk us through, firstly, the news of the day, which is the $18 million infrastructure loan that the government announced to this Tuki Tuki project, and your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And nice to see you both and be a part of your show. Look, we're delighted for the Tuki Tuki water storage project. As we all know, these projects come after years and years of effort by a lot of committed and passionate locals. So it's really good to see them get to this next phase where they're just testing, moving from feasibility into that, is this a viable project? And we know we see the climate variability. We know we're in for longer, drier, hotter and wetter conditions. And this is really a community that is front-footing that and really understanding, okay, if we store our water, we'll build resilience not only for our farmers and growers, but better flows in our rivers and streams, recreational opportunities, and certainly a supplementing urban supply as well.
Karen, obviously this Tuki Tuki Dam is in the Hawke's Bay, and we heard a lot about the Ruataniwha Dam that didn't go ahead. Is this a completely new project? Is it just a new name? I mean, what is the process on this? Because there was a huge amount of work that went into Ruataniwha and then it just got canned. Is this going to happen?
Yeah, and you're right, it is the same site. It's really frustrating. We've seen the same sort of level of energy put into a Wairarapa storage project and got canned due to regulatory constraints at the final hurdle. For Ruataniwha, who became Tuki Tuki, it was a lot to do with the swapping of land, the conservation land, and the Director General of DOC did approve that swap. However, it was taken by Forest and Bird through to, I think it was the High Court, and they, on a point of law, decided, the courts decided that the Director General couldn't actually undertake that swap or approve that swap. So then it went through quite a different process and circle back round. And with like the Waimea Dam situation, we saw Nick Smith introduce a private members bill that enabled that to occur. So there are legal mechanisms. So I guess what I'm saying is, it got to a point where, yes, there was large-scale agreement, including DOC for this transfer of land, but we still didn't have quite the right regulatory mechanism to enable that.
You have just recently put in a comprehensive submission on the RMA reform. What was in that would have allowed for that regulatory freedom in this instance? Yeah,
well, certainly we pitched at quite a high level as the goals that are within those two bills, current bills, and that was actually recognising the importance of food production. At the moment, infrastructure's recognised or housing, but just being able to set ourselves up for success and enable, the importance of growing our food in New Zealand, the export opportunities that go alongside that, that's all really sidelined currently. And it brings a really cautionary approach to growing food as opposed to bringing an enabling approach to growing food within environmental safeguards.
Karen, the other thing, as you mentioned to me, is that, and I think a lot of people understand this, New Zealand doesn't have a water problem. We've got plenty of water, right? We've got plenty of water. The problem is we don't have water in the right places. And I think, that's probably said about a lot of countries around the world, but we are blessed with water How frustrating is it for, someone like an organisation like Irrigation New Zealand when it seems to have us, Sarah, myself, you, that this is a no-brainer, that we store water, right? But we just keep getting hurdle after hurdle after hurdle put in front of us when it is the most important thing. And we're talking food security here.
Yeah, food security leads on to national security, and we're all very aware of global insecurity at the moment. Look, it is really frustrating, and I just wanted to touch on some stats because I think some people, a lot of the those that are against irrigation think of intensification of land use. Actually, I want to point out that already 90% of horticulture is irrigated. 80% of arable crops and seed production use irrigation. 54% of our vineyards use irrigation. 40% sheep and beef in some part of their business, and 28% of our dairy land. So that's really, really significant. And you look at that alongside how much rainfall we have, and it's a massive figure. It's 300 billion cubic meters of rainfall each year. And look, I struggled to get my head around that, so I did some research with the AI. That is the same equivalent to Lake Taupō 5 times over filled per annum, or as I went to the stadium, Wellington Stadium, on Saturday night to watch the Hurricanes beat the Blues, 265,000 times per year that is filled with our rainfall. Now we use 8% of that. So 92% of that rainfall flows through our rivers and aquifers, wetlands, and out to sea. And that's important. But we have a massive resource that we can capture in those periods of high flow to use and offset the impacts when we go really dry. And as I said earlier, we know from Earth Sciences, we know from the Climate Change Commission, conversations we're having, we're going to get particularly dry.
There is an indication between good water management and intensification land use to also nitrogen leaching, and Irrigation New Zealand's role in educating that irrigator around good water management needs to go hand in hand. There's only one solution to go and get the storage, but if we don't actually use it properly or overuse it or use it in the wrong times, from an education perspective, where do you think that knowledge gap is, and where do you need the support of your cohorts in the industry to support Irrigation New Zealand to educate around good water management?
Absolutely, and you're quite right, Sarah, they do go hand in hand, and this is all about good practice or best practice within the right environmental safeguards. So we have a training and education role in Irrigation New Zealand as well. We run different programs, certificate of design, a certified assessor, and these are about bringing best practice to the whole system. So, we've got the right people designing, we've got the right irrigation system being put on and installed and maintained, and we've got those practicing in the industry that really understand what best practice looks like. We also reach out and work with our regional councils so that they understand just how those irrigation systems work alongside the compliance piece of that. So look, nutrient management, absolutely critical. We need to work with all of our sector partners. That includes beef and lamb, dairy and Z, arable and horticulture, and just make sure that we're tailoring the nutrients accurately with water. And I think when I talk about our farm, irrigation enables us to be very precise with the way we apply those nutrients alongside controlled water application, so that they absolutely optimise that uptake and we don't see that tracking through the soil profile.
Karen, you mentioned that obviously it's an election year and there's a bit of a wish list from Irrigation New Zealand. We saw this with Federated Farmers in the last election. They put in 12 and I think they got 11 and a half of them. That's a 95% success rate. What are you guys looking for?
Yeah, well, look, we're engaging with government and the opposition already on this, but we'd like to see a Minister of Freshwater. That doesn't mean a completely new ministry. We already have those resources, but we want to see sort of that coordination across, the management and use of water through food production, infrastructure, climate adaptation, energy, community resilience, all those things. Currently, they sit within different ministries and conflicting and competing tensions. We actually need to bring that out in the open and work through that collaboratively. We need a national water strategy. That's like the roadmap on how we fix these constant discussions that bring in conflict. We need to manage. We know we've got ample water. We know we've got huge demand. We know we have pressure points at certain times of the year. It's not that hard to map out how we could manage that adequately. We'd like to see a national entity stood up to work through that pipeline of bringing through different water projects. We've brought out the former CEO of Tasmanian Irrigation last year, Andrew Kneebone, just to get some insights about how the Tasmanians are doing it. And that was a really interesting approach. And it showed that pipeline in New Zealand that we could identify areas, prioritise them, put in the right resources, and that's public and private funding, and start to build this resilience throughout New Zealand. Not doing one every 20 or 30 years and then starting from scratch and really building those resources again. I touched on the resource management framework and wanting an enabling, not a constraining environment. Using water is okay. Yes, we have to use it well. Yes, we have to manage our impacts, but it's not a resource that we lock up. It's a resource that we need for all of the things we've talked about today. So those are probably our top ones. And I guess just as we embed that new thinking into the resource management regime, it's about water variability, not water scarcity. We are not scarce of water. We just need to manage it better.
Nice work. Karen, thank you so very much. I think you've got a great opportune runway with this particular election. And of course, with changing climatic patterns, we are starting to see some reality around exactly what you said, water variability versus scarcity. So best wishes, and we will talk to you again very, very soon on CountryWide Connect. We really appreciate your time.
Lovely. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Karen.
CountryWide Connect, connecting farmers and growers to what they need to know to grow. Your daily innovative rural show with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.